The movie for this is called Slavemen. Even with a title like that, you won't be able to predict what exactly this movie is going to do. I sure didn't. So the movie begins with these scientists hiding out in the garage waiting for a bunch of government guys to escort them to safety. However, two gangsters with guns track them down and shoot them, stealing what they were working so hard on. Something called Project S. We then go to the opening credits where our hero is briefly shown before his debut, and holy crap, wait, is that freaking Xeranos from Kamen Rider Den O? I'm such a fan! How are you here? I'm so sorry that you're here! Also, hope you like these credits, because this is actually the best action scene in the whole movie. So anyway, this guy's name is Takeshi Yasuyuki. He's an amateur filmmaker, and I say this in quotes because these movies are just vlogs of him talking about how much he wants to find a woman to film. But don't worry, it's not porn, no matter how many times it feels unsettling. And yes, that is also another Kamen Rider, Birth from O. There are a lot of actors from Kamen Rider and other Toku properties in this movie. I kinda pity them a little. When Takeshi is not making those movies, he's a janitor for different companies. While cleaning one day in a photography studio, he runs into Koju Kiryu, the rich son of a company for an app for idols. Let's just call it TikTok for now. Kiryu is his old rival from photography club back in high school, who now currently does everything he can to make himself look like a jerk, telling Takeshi that he should have committed suicide already. Remember that for later. Anyway, after Takeshi, in his bumbling ways, accidentally messes things up and gets him and his friend hunted by Koji's photography goons, because those exist, he runs into this maid on the street. She hands him a set of tissues, and that cements that she's the one his movie should be about. After thinking he got away from the rich boy's goons, Takeshi goes back to the bridge and starts filming her from afar. Thank God this isn't porn, it's just creepier. When the goons do find him, instead of defending himself, he makes sure to record his feelings and keeps the camera focused on himself. Movie, I gotta say, this is a very weird way to vent out your frustrations towards vloggers. Walking home that night, Takeshi tells his camera that he wishes that he could just erase them all so that he wouldn't have such a miserable life. Because yeah, that's what this character needs. He needs school shooter written all over him. And then when he goes home, Takeshi doesn't want to acknowledge his older sister. Instead, he talks to the camera and walks around the kitchen in circles in a scene that even the guy from American Beauty would admit is too weird. The next day, Takeshi's sister basically pushes him into trying to ask out the maid to be in his movie if he wants to get together with her. However, he ends up fumbling a bit like normal and runs away from the scene as fast as he can. Meanwhile, the two thieves from before, along with their sister, meet with the chairman of the company, Yuzan Kiryu. They present to him the theme for Project S, the slave head. Yeah, the government is apparently being a little too on the nose with this naming scheme. Anyway, what's so special about this helmet is that it has the power to rewrite all reality. Yep, the mask not only increases the user's fighting ability a whopping 3 times, it also allows the user to erase someone from reality and create a brand new one without them. Yeah, this might be the most overpowered, stupidest thing I've ever seen any government scientist make on their own. But don't worry, it makes sense eventually. The thief actually wants to use the slave head on the chairman because he and his siblings are pissed off for what he did to their mother in their tragic backstory. Yuzan and his son retreat while the slave head kills his bodyguards with his dual-wielding katanas. Soon Takeshi stumbles upon the incident and flees for his life, but he doesn't get very far, getting sliced by the 2 swords. The maid from earlier sees this and runs for the hills, not bothering to get any help or do anything helpful. In fact, she did that earlier, but it's okay because she gave him tissues once and she's cute. Takeshi sees himself getting his photos taken as he's dying. Not wanting to go out on live leak, the vlogger steals the mask from the thief and puts it on, giving him a slick wardrobe with it. Learning about the ability to erase people, his enemies now being shown as anyone with a Hannibal mask, Takeshi successfully removes the thief from reality, creating a new one. Here, Slavemen, yes, he calls himself that because he considers himself a soldier to change the fate of slaves, which feels like its own thing that I don't want to get into. Anyway, Takeshi finds himself in the reality without the thief and discovers that he's now the head photographer on set. Not sure how those two correlate, but okay. Now that he's in charge, Takeshi takes pictures of the model, but it's clear that even in another reality, his red flags don't go away on their own. The only reason he stops is because the newest model to the studio is Ayano Kogure, aka the maid that Takeshi is so smitten with. She's going to have her pictures taken by Shibata, this spare photographer, showing that this place is scumbag central. Rather than just assert his dominance and say that they'll switch models, Takeshi becomes Slaveman again and removes Shibata from reality. Now, in this new reality, Takeshi is the only photographer to do anything. Koji tries to make a move on Ayano, but Takeshi doesn't back down this time and gets to be the one to walk her home. However, when Takeshi asks to record her, already doing it without her permission, she objects to it and points out that it's super creepy to make it a woman pretty for videos. But you know, posing for pictures is completely fine, I guess. No, actually the reason why Ayano doesn't want to be in a movie is that she had a pretty crappy life and doesn't think that her life should be captured like that. Her dad used to hit her when she was growing up and her brother's in jail for assault. I mean, you don't have to talk in a movie, I'm just saying. At home, Takeshi's now supportive sister tells him that he should continue the path he's on and everything will be alright. The next day at work, Ayano tries to ignore Takeshi as she instead talks to Koji, but that all gets interrupted when the thieves arrive, somehow knowing about the reality changes. They demand the slave head back. When Takeshi refuses, a fight breaks out and Ayano and Koji try to escape the building together. Takeshi runs into his sister, who brings him the bag with the slave head in it, and Takeshi puts it on. Now, as Slavemen, he plans on erasing the thieves again, who now have his sister as a hostage. However, as Slavemen sees Ayano and Koji flee together, he changes his mind, wanting to erase Koji and leaves his sister to die. Our hero, everyone! After having some difficulty with the face scanning aspect, he literally uses a hammer to avoid the facial recognition software instead of just bashing his own head in. So this is how my iPhone feels when it feels like I can't read my face properly. It's telling me you're stupid. Takeshi finds himself in a brand new reality where he discovers that Ayano is now his baby sister. You're probably questioning how removing a totally unrelated guy from history results in this mess of a family. Trust me, it gets weirder, because this is where the plot starts to go off the rails. You see, Ayano goes off to see Koji again. Yes, he's still here. Right as they're about to kiss, Takeshi bursts in, interrupting as he grabs Ayano and tries to drag her away. But then Koji reveals that this reality is a result of the mental pain Takeshi has been dealing with. He plans on killing Takeshi, but then Koji's dad reveals that he knows that Koji isn't his real son, rather the son of the man his wife cheated on. The big bad CEO plans on using the slave head in his possession to erase Koji from existence. He also reveals that Takeshi's real sister, along with the female thief, are now part of this guy's entourage. Takeshi, Ayano, and Koji all manage to escape along with the workers, now comprised of the former thieves and photographers. They find a place to hide out where they try to eat some lunch, and during that time, Takeshi starts to realize the error of his ways, convincing a depressed Koji to eat, and then tells Ayano that she was right about him only seeing women from their beauty alone. But then the CEO and his assassin harem find everyone. While the workers distract the CEO's bodyguards, Takeshi and Ayano find another slave head as well as Takeshi's camera. Takeshi grabs the camera and films Ayano again, this time not wanting to focus on her beauty, but on her anger and her sadness. Even when Takeshi's sister finds her again and starts slashing his back with her katana, he still continues to film Ayano crying at the sight of blood. Yes, we've gone from one creepy extreme to another. Due to shenanigans, everyone dies fighting each other, including Takeshi's sister when Takeshi takes the slave head and scans her, the two of them reconciling. The only one left is Ayano. And this is when the film gets even weirder, because, you see, Ayano returns to where she belongs originally, the rooftop where she tried to commit suicide.
待って、綾乃さんが突然飛び降りた。というか止まった。どういうこと？変だ。変じゃないよ。どうして？実際の綾乃さんも飛び降りの自殺未遂で昏睡状態にあるからだ。
As it turns out, this was all a dream. Everything you saw was completely in this girl's head while she lay down in a coma. So yeah, the reason why none of this made sense was because it was all stuff that a teenage girl made up. Would you think that makes up for everything you saw? Don't answer that because we're not done yet. You dare question that? You see, Takeshi is shocked to learn about the fact that he's a figment of Ayano's imagination. All the other characters return, seemingly gaining sentience, as they explain to him what the real Ayano was like and why she tried to kill herself. In the real world, Ayano was the one with the crappy life, working as a part-time custodian at a photography studio. She was jealous of the model getting attention and that made her feel miserable. Her brother, this guy, Koji, was actually a very timid man, making a mess out of his job and with his girlfriend. He was so bad that Ayano wished that sometimes he was the bad guy. With her whole life in the gutter, she thought she found someone who stood out to her. One of the photographers who smiled at her. The only thing that made Ayano feel happy was watching Tokusatsu movies, seeing the beginning scene of the movie as well as the credits that we saw. On the particularly bad day when the CEO tried to feel her fingers, yeah, this whole company is just one large fetish, Ayano thought that the photographer wanted to take pictures of her, but instead he was in love with someone who was, quote, old enough to be his older sister. And so Ayano was so distraught she put on her favorite dress and went on to a building to jump. So yes, this whole story was just one weird self-insert fanfic. Now I have never run fanfic before, but I think I can write something better than this. So where do we go from here? Ayano is now currently in a coma, slowly dying in her sleep. But inside of her head, Takeshi wants to save her despite the fact that he's totally fake. He becomes Slavemen again and goes around using his scanning ability to try and remove every bad memory from her. It doesn't do anything. As you can see why, the sequence is almost straight up out of Looney Tunes. Him literally just running in and fighting anyone that causes her even the slightest inconvenience. It's hilarious out of context and somewhat charming. Eventually, Takeshi comes to the conclusion that the person he should be erasing is Ayano, because anyone who thinks those thoughts should be erased, because anyone who considers suicide is a fool. So Ayano gets erased and Takeshi finally makes his film with her in it, vanishing in the wind. In the real world, Ayano wakes up and in a new reality, one where she never jumped off that roof. Yet, that entire world you saw was fake, but somehow it changed all of her reality. So to conclude, the movie couldn't even stick to its own "this was all a dream" premise. And so the movie ends with Ayano living her life the way she wants, with other voices living in her head. You know, totally normal. Slavemen is fascinating. The writing can be pretty bad at times with a lot of nonsensical dialogue and characters. The cast does their best to make the material work, but doesn't succeed in many cases. The overall message, while useful in the intriguing twist at the end, does get muddied in its execution. Telling people that those thinking of suicide should be erased is not exactly what you should be going for. The action is pretty limited with the budget, but at the same time, I do appreciate what this film was trying to do. I see the vision in here, and even though it might be unintentional, it does bring a few laughs in how ridiculous the premise and the situation is. It's still something I can easily recommend, especially for Tokusatsu fans. The main character literally gets inspired by watching a movie and coming up with this whole scenario and trying to relate it back to her own life. It is kind of charming in that aspect. And so I thank you all for watching. I wanted to talk about this movie for a long time, and I'm glad I managed to get out my thoughts on that. And I hope I to see you guys in the next one. Take care.